Hello and welcome to this Community Brands webinar for the SSS Family Portal. Today, we're going to cover the family expenses section of the PFS. As you move through the PFS, you'll land on the family expenses overview page. It's going to detail what to expect in this section and let you know what you need to complete the questions to come. This section will allow you to document the full cost of tuition for your applicants and non-applicant dependents. You'll also be able to indicate the amount you feel you can reasonably afford in tuition. To complete this section, you should have an understanding of your family's finances and know how much you can reasonably and realistically put towards your child's education for the school year. Since some areas of this section will also ask about additional household expenses, including medical and insurance costs, as well as some discretionary spending like camps, club dues, and vacations, it will be helpful to pull that information together before beginning this section. After we review the information listed here and pull all of our information and paperwork together, we can click Continue to move on to the first set of questions for the family expenses section. The first section of family expenses is educational expenses, or section 13. Here's where we're going to document all of the costs related to our child's education. So let's begin. 13A asks the total number of children whom you provide support for. You're going to include students applying for aid and other non-applicant dependents, even if they don't live with you for the full year. In our case, we have one applicant and one non-applicant dependent, so we're going to put 2. 13B asks of those children, how many will attend tuition charging centers, schools, or colleges? We don't want to include children who are cared for by a nanny or family members, only official tuition charging institutions. In our case, only our applicant is attending a tuition-based program, so we're going to enter a 1. After we complete these 2 sections, we're going to move on to filling out information about applicant 1. If you listed more than one applicant in section 2 of the PFS, you will see them listed separately. So you'll have applicant 1, applicant 2, and so on. After you fill out your applicant information, you'll then see your dependents listed in order as you added them in section 3 of the PFS. So let's begin with applicant 1. The first question for applicant 1 asks if the student was enrolled in a tuition-based preschool, school, or college for the 18-19 school year. In our case, that's the school year that is currently underway. So we're going to say yes. Since this school year is underway, it should be relatively easy to get the needed paperwork to complete the upcoming questions. 13D asks for the full cost of tuition for the 18-19 school year. In this case, it's $20,000. Next, we're going to list the way that we're going to contribute to that education. 13E asks how much money you can contribute from your own earnings and assets. This year, we paid $5,000 from our own earnings and assets. Next, we want to document the contribution from the applicant's earnings and assets. In this case, it was 0. 13G would like to know about the contribution from other sources, such as friends and relatives, but excluding financial aid. So we do not want to include any aid we may have received. In our case, a grandparent of the applicant is going to contribute $1,000 towards the education. And now the system adds up all of the contribution amounts, and we can confirm that together we contributed $6,000 towards tuition this year, and that's correct. And then we'll enter the amount of financial aid we received. For the 18-19 school year, that was $14,000. When we're entering information in this section, it's important not to enter any special characters, meaning no $signs, decimals, or commas. And another easy mistake that people can make is to accidentally enter an O instead of a 0 because they are close on the keyboard. So keep that in mind as you're completing this section. Now that we've entered all the information for the 18-19 year, let's move on to the 2019-20 year, or the year that we're actually applying for aid for. And again, it would like the estimated full cost of tuition for the upcoming school year. And our tuition did go up this year to $25,000. And then it's going to ask the same set of questions. How much can we contribute from our own earnings and assets? After sitting down and creating a monthly budget, now we found for the whole school year, we can afford to contribute $7,000 this year. The applicant will still not contribute. And then from relatives or friends, we are contributing another $1,000, just like last year. The types of contributions that your applicant could be making is if they have a 529 plan that is in their name, or if they have any savings that you've set aside for education. Those are things that you should consider when you're filling out this section. Now, for the financial aid that we're hoping to receive this year, it's $25,000, which is the full tuition, minus 13N, which is $8,000, or the amount the system added together from our contribution amounts. So when we take the 25 minus the 8,000, we get $17,000. That's how much aid we hope to receive. Now remember, that's not a guarantee of aid, but we're indicating to the school what we would like to see happen. Now we can move on to the dependent section. It's going to ask if the dependent was enrolled in tuition-based childcare, preschool, school, or college in the 18-19 school year. And in this case, this dependent is in public school this year and will be next year. So the answers to these questions are no. If either of these or both of these are yes for you, you can switch that and make that change. And it's going to ask the same types of questions that we just answered. But we'll say no. And now we can move on to the next section by clicking Save and Next. When we click Save and Next, it will come up with a pop-up box that asks us, it'll add up all of our contributions and give us that amount. So it says, you said you can pay $8,000 out of pocket for all of your applicants and dependents listed in this section. Is this correct? If it's not correct, you can click No or Cancel to make a change to your contribution amounts. Or if it is correct, you can say yes to move on to the next section. If you say yes, your section will save and you'll move on to section 14, Other Expenses. And we'll move through this section. It's going to ask information about medical or insurance premiums, and then some additional expenses your household may have. So for 14A, it says, enter the total medical dental expenses you paid that were not reimbursed by insurance. So this would be your any uninsured hospital visits, appointments, prescriptions, or if you had any procedures, or maybe your child received braces that were not covered by insurance. You can enter that amount here. And it will tell you that you only have to enter an amount if you spend more than 5% of your total income. In our case, that amount is $3,500. That is our threshold. Since our medical bills do not exceed $3,535, we are not going to enter a value. We're just going to leave it at 0. And again, it is pink, so we're going to leave that. We are going to enter a value there. 14C would like the total amount paid out for insurance premiums. Our insurance premiums went up slightly from last year, so we're going to document $30,000. Now, I know that my insurance premiums regularly go up every year, so for 2019, I am going to estimate an increase. Once we enter information about our medical expenses, we'll move on to the additional expenses area. 14D asks for the total annual amount of additional unusual expenses incurred, defined by the what's acceptable above. So let's look at this list here. This list are the acceptable additional expenses. And then there's a list of non-acceptable expenses. As a rule, these should be non-discretionary expenses, things that your family could not avoid but did have to pay. In our case, we're going to document $5,100. And to itemize that down below, it's $100 for union dues, and $5,000 for care of elderly parents. Because nursing home and union dues are both acceptable expenses. Next, let's move on to 14F, which is the total amount paid in club fees that exceeds $250. Ours is rate on the limit. So we have $300 that we're going to document in club fees for a rod and gun club, and that is $250 for each parent. 14H would like the total amount for camps and lessons. In our case, we do not have any of those. That could be summer camp, might be ski camps, or if you had swim lessons, piano lessons, language lessons that you paid extra in addition to your normal tuition for your children. And then enter the amount for vacations. In our case, we did take a road trip in the spring, so that is $2,000. Once you complete section 14, you'll click Save and Next and move on to the next section. In this case, we would move on to the business and farm section of the PFS. Depending on your family's financial situation, your section might be slightly different. I'd like to thank you for joining us for the short overview of the family expenses section of the SSS Family Portal. For assistance with your application, you can contact parent support by phone or email, or you can create a support ticket through the Messages tab of your family portal. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.